We are back with Mona Shomali. Mona, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I remember it. I
Okay.
remember. Okay, so I think the best example I can tell is the one I always tell my students, which is the milpa in Mexico, or it's sometimes known as the Three Sisters, which is corn, beans, and squash. So, um, so the milpa is basically, how can I say this? So American ecologists went over to Mexico and in the Yucatan Peninsula, the Yucatec Maya, were saying, okay, we have to farm like this, corn, beans, and squash, rotating, or else the milpa god will get very angry at us and will punish our culture. So we have to do this rotation scheme. And so, of course, American ecologists were like, what's this, crazy mythology, third world, fables and whatnot. But then they started to test the soil, and the soil was unbelievably rich, and the corn, beans, and squash were growing at a rate that was way more productive than the corn on its own, beans on their own, the squash on their own. So when they got down to it and took it to the laboratory, what they realized is that when you pair specifically corn, beans, and squash together, or not pair, but when you group them, their roots go down together and intertwine, and then they form little nodules, which we could call them like warts or bumps,
Mm-hmm.
suck in or fixate way more nitrogen than they would if any of these plants were on their own. So basically, the milpa system is companion planting or rotation of planting, where you have to do corn, beans, and squash together. And that's something that the Mexican government has recognized and has adopted a lot of the Maya words that are used to classify soil in the milpa system because it's so effective. So I think it's important when you come across a mythological reason for ecosystem management to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, you may not understand the milpa god's significance of why the god will get angry, but then if you deconstruct the science of it, it's actually very sustainable.
Can you
So,
talk? Can you talk a bit about how your concerns for the environment and the human rights of the indigenous people are manifested in your art?
of course, well, I think art is expression, and I think it's usually an expression of a conflict within the artist that they're resolving through depictions of images, colors, shapes that will stir some type of emotion in the viewer. It's like a perverse communication where you're working something out and then hopefully it helps somebody else who's also working it out. So for me, the first, they say that every major first major collection has to do with the artist examining themselves, and then the second major collection has to do with the artist examining their worldview. So that's very much how it was for me. My first collection, Naked Folklore, was the conflicts I felt between being American and Iranian. Because even though I was raised with all this pride, the minute I wanted to do very American things, my Iranian community was like, no, 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 you can't do that. You're an Iranian girl. And so I struggled with knowing what was okay. And obviously, it is not okay to be naked in Iranian culture ever. We're one of the only cultures that didn't have a nudist art period. So I, as a California girl, thought, well, hold up. All my friends are running around naked in these nudist colonies. It sort of became the first way to push back and say, push a button and say, well, hold on. What if I'm a good Iranian girl, but I also want to do, things that are California girl or would be seen as a bad Iranian girl? And so I was resolving this conflict of how to be Iranian and American. And then with my second collection, the conflict is really for me, why don't we understand interconnectedness, and why don't we understand that a poison that falls out of the sky, a pesticide plane, is going to end up in a fetus? Or, to quote Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, if eggshells are breaking due to pesticides so that birds can't even hatch, what is that doing to humans? Major fish death. And so I think I'm wrestling with the idea that I feel like people aren't cognizant of how the food chain or the things that we introduce into our environment, how they affect us. We're so porous.
Is this the collection Invisible Stains?
Yes, yes. And so I feel like I'm still trying to work that out. Like I don't understand why people aren't more susceptible, and I guess I'm still working that out. Is it education? I don't think so. I think there are people who will hear the facts but will go into a defensive posture because they can't handle it. So what is it? Is it ego? Is there some, does the human feel some, in Western culture, feel like that biblical expression that it's our duty to dominate, have dominion? Is that what this is? Versus, indigenous cultures like Pachamama belief that we're equal to animals and plants. I mean, I think if you tell most Americans that they're equal to an animal or plant, that would really not be okay with them.
Mm-hmm. I understand the artistic expressions and the right to exercise your freedom to express your art in any way it can. But does your art in these different collections, do they usually have an agenda?
I mean, I don't know the agenda when I'm doing it because I'm in real time resolving some type of conflict. But I definitely think when the collection is done, I have a very strong viewpoint that could be seen as activist or propaganda even. Because it's really hard, I think, to, if you have certain views of the world and you have the gift of putting them to paint, I think it's very hard to be cognizant, because I think at some point your subconscious just takes over. I think my subconscious took over in both those collections. And then it's only afterwards that I'm intellectually analyzing it with everybody else. But when that collection started, The Invisible Stains, the first image I see images. And the first image I saw was just this poisoned fetus. Literally, was the first image I saw. And I just thought, I have to paint this poisoned fetus. And then I wanted to paint a poisoned bird fetus and a poisoned human fetus that were coming from the same pesticide plane. And so, I mean, obviously when I was doing that, when I had the image and then I started to research what do pesticide planes look like, I didn't think, oh, I have this agenda. I just thought I have to show the sort of macabre, this idea that, well, basically, if environmental issues were not invisible, if the sky literally turned red when there was pollution, or if the water turned red, then we would be like, oh my God, what the F? But I think because so much of these gases and transparent chemicals and particulate matter is transparent, we can't see it. So I think subconsciously I wanted to say, well, what if this environmental pain that we're causing is visible?
In the chat room, Raquel TC said, wonderful to see Mona on your show. I met this wonderful woman last year when she brought a group of students to Iwakramo. Very impressed with her work experience and also her other gifts of being. Very impressed with her other gifts, including being a very talented artist. That's what she meant. I understand, Mona, that you also have a deep love for hip hop. What is the attraction, and what do you mean when you say hip hop is a meditation on power?
Okay, I love hip hop so much that I feel, as a empowered feminist woman, I feel that people constantly want to tell me it's hypocritical, but I don't agree. I think, I lived in New York. I lived in Harlem for quite a while. I lived in New York for a decade. And I think what I love about hip hop, especially if you listen to the stuff that started in the 80s, 90s, is that it's really a conversation about the have-nots getting there. So it's really about, okay, we don't have power. This is what it looks like. This is what our lives look like. This is what our communities, our streets look like. This is what it's like to be powerless. But then ironically, through hip hop, a lot of the same people who sang about being from the hood became very powerful. And then it was a flip of where they're singing about having power, and then all the boasting of, I was in my other bands, or, just the bravado. And so I think we always judge the powerful, but I always think to myself, we should hold off on judging the powerful until the powerless become powerful themselves, because there's such a transformation um, that happens within a community. And I think there's so many types of power. So there's financial power, there's political power, there's intellectual power, there's sexual power, which many people argue is the strongest, seduction. And so when you think about powerless, for example, African American, Black America, or women or minorities, what were their traditional modes of power? For Black America, it was entertainment or sports. And for women, it was sexuality. And then what happens to people who get other types of power? And ironically, I think there's a lot of judgment. I look at one of my favorite topics to talk about is women who hate Beyonce. Fascinate me. She is the subject of a lot of controversy. Beyonce is that pop singer. For people who don't know, if you're the only
I wonder who wouldn't, but
yeah. So, but if you look at the people who hate her, they're saying things like, why is she being so sexual? She's bringing down the feminist movement with her sexuality. She's lowering the bar. But hold on a second. For a long, 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 long time, the only power women had was seductive power. That was their only tool in their arsenal. So now we're going to judge a woman for using the most old-fashioned tool in the arsenal. I mean, Beyonce has political power. She has financial power. She has, we could argue she hires people with intellectual power. But I think it's very fascinating that we would judge. And then, with hip hop, there's now a lot of financial power that's turning into political power, where you see Puffy and Jay-Z helping Obama get elected. But yet there's all this judgment of, why is it all cars and gold and girls? Well, because those were symbols of power when you didn't have it. That it's a persona, it's a power grab. And then once you get it, then hip hop starts to look different. Then you have conscientious hip hop like Talib Kweli and Mos Def, and people who are less talking about the acquiring and the ascension and are more talking about, the issues of when you are in a comfortable place, there's still going to be cultural issues. Like, just because you have power doesn't mean you don't self-hate, or, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I love power. I mean, I love hip hop because I think it's a meditation on power by the powerless who then get power. And it's that whole idea of, people have been talking about how America is abusing their power for years. But the irony is that in the Amazon right now, American companies are not they're not the bad guy. It's actually the Chinese who have and I'm not saying the Chinese are bad guys, but the Chinese now have the most contracts in the Amazon. They're negotiating a deal to buy Yasuni National Park in Ecuador. So I guess what I'm saying is everybody was like, oh, America bad, America bad. But hold on. What does it look like when the Chinese get all this power and are in the Amazon?
I think we are losing your sound.
You can't hear me?
Oh, okay. I thought I'd lost you just now. But tell me something. How do you express, if you do, your feminism in your art?
Well, I think what's really important as a woman, especially as an Iranian American woman, is to self-identify with how you see yourself in the culture. So, having been someone who was told you're not a good Iranian girl, you're not being a good Iranian, I think it's important for me, for example, to decide how I'm going to be Iranian, and that's okay. And I think everyone, I've heard the same thing with African Americans in New York being accused of not being Black enough because they don't do A or B, but they do C. And I think self-identification is really important. It's really important for us to say, I'm Iranian American. This is how I'm Iranian. This is how I'm American. You don't get to decide. I decide. And I think as a woman, we all need to decide how we want to be feminine, how we want to play gender roles. If we don't want to play them, if we want to stay home, if we want to go to work, it should really be a conscious decision and to voice our own narrative of the experience.
What are some ways of feminism help you grow as a woman?
I mean, I think painting nude women for about 10 years, I
Wow.
think really opened me up. I mean, I'm talking full nudity. You know, everything was out. And I think seeing so many nudes for live nudes, because I would paint live nudes, really helped me to see the my body as a vessel,
Right. You
as
know,
a container for spirit. And that body can be used in many ways. But then the mind can be used. And so there's this idea of sometimes women, I think, feel objectified when they feel like just a body. But then, what is the relationship between your body and your spirit and your personality? And do you have to downplay one in order to be strong in the other? I think it's problematic sometimes. I think women, if you look back, like in the 80s, women have had to dress like men to be in powerful positions. So what is it about female sexuality that is so threatening when you're in a arena of intelligence?
you know, I Raka said that you push boundaries, and it's obvious that you do push boundaries. And she went on to say further, she's given me a different view of American cultural issues that I did not understand. For example, her views on hip hop. But let me ask you this about pushing boundaries. Has it become a sort of addiction to you?
Uh, I mean, I think I have. I think I am very
You're
rebellious. To, and I think sometimes I wish I didn't rebel so much against myself. Like I'm the kind of person that can't go on a diet because if I do, then I'll eat the thing I'm not supposed to eat to piss off myself. And so I think for someone like me, what I've understood is that I really have to. I have to really be conscientious that I'm not pushing a boundary for the sake of pushing it, and that there's some content behind the push that I'm delivering. So,
I would love to engage you or hear your views on the relationship or the dynamic between pushing a bound, being rebellious and being disciplined. But another conversation, another conversation. I want to ask you this though. Just want to get in something about your teaching. What's it
yeah.
like being a college professor, and what is your favorite course to teach?
Oh gosh, you know what I really like teaching is there. I really love teaching international environmental governance,
Uh-huh.
but even more than that, I liked teaching program development, project management for the NGO international sector. And the reason I liked talking about that so much is because it was really about sort of reviewing all the intentions of all of the development activists before us and realizing that just because you have good intentions doesn't mean you're doing a good thing. And so, my favorite expression was the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so going back and looking at development and how it's been done, nobody thought, hey, I'm going to screw these Africans over. But a lot of the things that were done, moving people from tribes to, rows of homes that were cut off from pastoral animals or water supply and people abandoning the projects. I think what I really enjoyed with my students is letting them see that just because you have a good intention doesn't mean you're doing good work.
Mona,
Good work very much based on the feedback of the people that you are trying to empower. If they're telling you, no, I don't think this is working, and you're saying, no, it's working because this is the plan and the design and the logical framework, and this is my program that I'm here to do, then something is wrong. And I think what I try to teach my students is identify what is working in any community and support it. Don't go in and try to start this avant-garde thing that comes from nowhere and try to convince people to join.
if
So,
if you were to be a consultant, who would
well, I
hire
have
you?
been, yeah.
Sorry?
I have been a
Oh, you've
consultant.
been a consultant. What sector hires you? Who would hire you? What type of organizations would hire somebody like you?
There's a slew of NGOs that work in the Amazon with indigenous human rights and forest ecology. And then there's the international organizations. I mean, I've been hired. Well, my university paid me, NYU paid me, but I was a consultant on a World Bank report on water shortages in Dakar, Senegal, for example. So people will hire me sometimes because they're trying to make a point and they need the environmental angle and they don't understand how to make that angle. So a lot of times, my main niche is that I can speak ecology vernacular, but I can also speak international policy. So I can justify like why a certain water project needs to happen, based on sea level rise, because I understand how to read parametric models of global circulation models that predict for each region of the world, how high the water is going to rise, how many miles in. So I'll look at all that data and I'll sort of sync it and analyze it, and then I can make a recommendation and say, well, based on this info, in 2030, the water is going to be here, so the water infrastructure project has to be inland, and so I'm hired really as that juncture between science and international policy by anyone who needs it.
Time is upon us. And I remember when Raquel told me she was going to introduce you to me, or me to you, she said, you're going to enjoy chatting with Mona. And I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, it's already 9:30. So before I ask you a last set of, like quick questions, I just want to say this, that I feel I feel the time has just cheated us because I can sit here and listen to you all night. You have such a wealth of information, and I would
God.
like to extend an invitation for you to come back sometime and let's talk about some of these very interesting things.
Of course, but I am also very concerned that I'm boring the hell out of you.
Oh
So I
gosh, no. Oh my God. I hope I don't sound or look that way, but
no,
no.
but this is, I think most people who are exciting can weave in facts and narrative, and I feel like I'm just like fact, fact,
Oh
fact,
no,
fact.
no, no, no. Not at all. Not at all. But tell us quickly about well, if you can, manifesting your destiny, and how did your grad students react when you discussed it with them?
Oh my gosh, that's my favorite expression. That's what I would tell every grad student is the key to success is manifesting your vision.
Uh-huh.
And we talk a lot about you have to first build vision. You have to build a vision for what you see yourself doing in this world. Because without vision, I mean, a line from the Bible, people without vision perish. I mean, you really, if you're really serious about something that seems impossible, first build the vision and then be realistic about what are all the things that have to happen for that vision to be accomplished. So that means researching the people who have done it before, who have come before you, the body of work that's out there. Really understand the tasks, like what do you need to, publish, or what's the job you need to get, and then manifest it through your belief, and be in line with the universe. I say that a lot, that anything that you will for yourself that the universe doesn't want for you, it's ill-willed, is not really going to last. So if you're short and you want to be a basketball player, the universe really isn't on your side. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So you want to be a singer and you sound awful, the universe has kind of told you that's not a worthwhile vision for you. So, have a vision, understand what goes into it, and make sure you're aligned with the universe, and then manifest it. And I have a few students who will email me. I'll give them a shout out to Jill Boyd and Kia Shapiro, who will say, Mona, I'm manifesting my vision right now, and this is how. and
Mona,
that makes me very happy.
for those days when you do not feel like getting up and doing what you should be doing, what or who gets you out of that mindset?
Well, first of all, I just allow myself to not get anything done because I think that it's okay sometimes to not be productive as long as you treat it as a holiday.
Gotcha.
So I'm not one of those people who's like, well, then I eat some organic granola and I go for a jog and I listen to my, mantras and affirmations. No, I don't do that. I just go, well, I guess I'm low on energy today, and maybe that means I'm going to have a lot of energy in a few hours or tomorrow. So I try to be respectful of energy and think about it like climate. Some days are windy, some days are sunny. Especially living here in Santa Cruz, 2 blocks from the ocean. Some days are completely overcast, some days are so bright. So I try to treat myself as an ecosystem that maybe is having a cloudy day.
What do you enjoy about being Mona Somali?
Shomali, Mona
Shomali,
Shomali.
sorry.
No, it's okay. What do I enjoy? The opportunities. I
Hmm.
think I have a lot of I feel very blessed. I feel blessed with the opportunities I have, and I feel like those opportunities are how can I say this? Sometimes I think we don't. I mean, just the fact that I can pick up and move a town if I want
Yes.
is that I don't take for granted, because I know there are villages in the world where women live that they could never pick up and leave. They don't have the infrastructure, the skill set, the resources. So I feel very blessed with all the human resources I have in my life. You know what it is? My favorite expression for myself is that I'm not rich or anything by any means on a American level, maybe globally, but I think the currency that I value most is our human relationships.
Ah, ah.
So I feel like I feel very blessed in that through human relationships, I've been able to do a lot of amazing things in my life.
In the chat room, G said, not boring at all.
Oh, good.
Where do you draw your inspiration, Mona?
Um, I think from two things: from the people who have mentored me and the people that I mentor. So when I was younger, I had a lot of mentors, and I used to say, "Thank you so much. I can't believe you're mentoring me." Like art teachers who would take me to special fancy art classes or shows, and they always used to say to me, "Mona, we're mentoring you now, but one day we expect you to mentor other people." And I think when I get those calls from the folks that I mentor and they're talking to me about what they need, I remember my old self talking to my mentors. And so I think it's just that I think what replenishes me is being a part of that chain. Again, going back to ecosystem, which is ecosystem equilibrium, which is people are feeding me and then I'm feeding others. I think as a college professor, I was paid to believe in people. Really, that's what I say. And so believing in people and having people believe in me is really what keeps me going, what inspires me, and is really what is my food in this life.
What
Is
is your favorite thing to do for fun?
okay, dancing, hiking, swimming, walking along the beach, walking in the forest. Um, I'm a sucker for good hip hop music or reggaeton. I love Iranian dancing too. Oh, I like to cook, but that's not relaxing. That's just something I'm doing.
Of all the things you're involved in, Mona, which is the most gratifying?
I think the most gratifying thing ever, the dream, is when you find yourself working alongside your friends. That moment when your friends become your coworkers is really a hot moment. It's
Is that
when
that happened between you and Raquel?
of course it happened between me
Uh-huh.
and I think that's gold. That's really gold when suddenly you can no longer distinguish whether your partner's in a movement or really good friends because they've collapsed and you're both.
What still surprises you about yourself?
What still surprises me about myself? What still surprises me? I think sometimes the things that hurt my feelings. I'll tell myself, "Oh, I'm so over this. I'm so over that. I'm evolved. I'm a baller now. I'm balling at high altitudes." And then something will happen and I'll be like, I just want to break down and cry like a baby. And I think what I'm realizing is even though we purport to be really tough, I think I'm still pretty porous. And I think I'm learning that that's okay.
The human condition, I guess.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, like it doesn't. It's really funny how I still get my feelings hurt left and right. You know, people don't even sometimes realize it because I'll try to cover it up, but I'll just be like, "Oh my god, that hurt me so much."
So
Yeah.
so so when are you most when are you most happy?
When I'm either being told a good story or telling one.
Mm.
Because I love storytelling, and that's a big part of Iranian culture is to sit around. You know, once people have drank, there's a part of the night where people just tell stories. And I have this one Iranian friend. Every time she sees me, she tells me the same story, and I was there for it. You know, it's not like I need to hear it again, but she tells me over and over because it's a part of how we relate, how we um, I can tell you the story really quickly. When I was a very bad girl when I was younger. Not very bad, but when I studied abroad in Italy and I was kicked out of our dorm. Me and my friend were kicked out of our dorm because it was a women's only dorm and we had two men dancing in our room shirtless. And so we were kicked out of the dorm. And so it was me and her. So obviously I was there. But every time I see her, this is Nagin, another shout out. Every time I see her, she's like, "Remember how we were kicked out?" And it's like, how could I forget I was there? You know, but she'll sort of retell the
What are you
story.
most thankful for?
My health and
Oh,
my health, because I feel like health is everything. If I'm not feeling healthy, it's very hard for me to help others be healthy, if that makes sense.
it
And
does. When you think back on the long arc of your career, what would you say you got right and what did you get wrong, if anything?
I think what I got wrong was that I felt for years that because I was supporting people that I shouldn't make very much money. I felt like I would be a hypocrite. So I kind of not took pride, but like I was like, oh, you know, look at me, you know, not making that much money because I'm helping people who don't have that much money. And I sort of identified with that. And I think what I'm learning now is that if you're good at anything, the universe should compensate you and to not take pride in being paid little. And then I think what I got right was I think from early on, I spotted people who I thought were going to blow up. And I believed in them or had them join my team and believe in me. So I think what I've gotten right are the relationships that are necessary to build a team and to build leadership.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell your 15-year-old self?
Don't worry about being so hairy. It'll be a good thing when you're older.
Mona. Ah, and the final question for the evening is, what makes you laugh out loud?
Um, Probably the off-color jokes. I mean, I think if I Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Eddie Murphy. I mean, I think humor that's sort of cuts across um, politically incorrect genres, possibly. No one makes me laugh harder than Dave Chappelle. So, yeah, I think good stand-up comedy is really just it's something to pay for.
Mona, thank you so much. And once again, I'm extending an invitation for you to return sometime so we could talk about some other things. I mean, I was reading your bio and um, your history, and I was like, wow, we will never get through all of this in 1 hour. So I hope that I have been able to, sort of. I like to say, let me use this analogy. I like to say that each person is a gem with various facets, and oftentimes people only get a glimpse of one or two facets, and they form an opinion. But what I like to do in this conversation is to twist the gem a bit and expose the various facets, so that
Right.
people can have a more multidimensional perspective. So I hope I was able to do that with you tonight.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think the fact that I laughed during the interview means I had a good time because I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to fake laugh for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And have a good, well, it's now going to be evening for you. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Selwyn, for having me. It was delightful. Thanks for all the great questions and for your interest and just for your energy.
You're welcome. This is Selwyn Collins saying thanks for listening. Fear not what fear whispers to you. Fear your obedience to it. Good night.
Good night.
Soleil levant.